Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Allahumma inna nas'aluka ilman nafi'a wa rizqan tayyiba wa amalan mutaqabbala. Allahumma faqihna fi ad-din wa 'allimna at-ta'wil ya rabbal alameen. Alhamdulillah, today we are starting the chapter of the rulings of those that are exempted from fasting in the book Umdatu Al-Fiqh by Ibn Qudama Al-Maqdisi rahimahullah. قال المصنف رحمه الله, the author rahimahullah, he says باب أحكام المفطرين في رمضان, the chapter of those that are exempted in the month of Ramadan. He says قال ويباح الفطر في رمضان لأربعة أقسام, and it is permissible for those to break their fast in the month of Ramadan for four types or four categories of people. أحدها المريض الذي يتضرر به So the first is the sick person that will be harmed or affected by the fast. والمسافر الذي له القصر فالفطر لهما أفضل وعليهما القضاء وإن صام أجزأهما. And the musafir, the one that is traveling, the travel of the person that is allowed to shorten their prayer, musafir al-qasr. And he says for them, for those two categories, the breaking of the fast is permissible, and they should make up the number of days that they did not fast, but if they fasted, it would be valid. So let's take the first one, al-marid alladhi yatadarraru bihi, the sick person that would be harmed if he fasted during the month of Ramadan. So for the sick person, it is permissible for him to break his fast. It is permissible for him to break his fast. Now, is it allowed for him to fast? And the scholars have differed upon this, and the majority of the scholars have said that it is permissible for him to fast even if it will harm him during the fasting. And this goes back to the mas'ala, or this is built upon the mas'ala of is a tadawi wajib or not? Is taking medicine and taking medication, is it wajib? Is it something that's mandatory or compulsory? Or is it something which is mubah? It is permissible. And the majority of the scholars have said that it is not mandatory, but rather it is permissible. It is permissible, except in the case where it's extremely easy for the person to take and it's a life or death situation, where it would be considered suicide, that if he does not take the medicine. Other than that, the scholars have said that it is permissible for him to take a tadawi, and it is not wajib upon him to take a tadawi, to take medication if he is in that circumstance. And this is because, a person, at the end of his life, for example, may need a lot of medication, or may need a lot of treatment, and it could be very, very expensive for this person, right? For example, a person that lives in a country where the treatment is not available, and he has to travel outside, he has to pay for a plane ticket, he has to go, and then he has to pay for private hospital somewhere else in a different country, right? It could take all of the wealth that he was saving up throughout his life, all of that could be spent just to take care of himself, and perhaps he doesn't even have enough to take care of himself. So do we say that it is wajib, it is mandatory for him to do that? Or is he allowed to have sabr and say that I will resist and I will not take a tadawi, take the treatment that's necessary, but he will have patience? And the majority of the scholars have said that it is permissible for him to, it is mubah, it is the ruling, it is mubah for him to go, but it is not compulsory for him to do that. And based upon this, they have said that it is permissible for you to fast, even if it will harm you For example, if the doctor tells you that, look, you need to take this medicine 2 times a day, and if you don't take it 2 times a day, then your sickness will prolong for, instead of 1 month, it'll prolong for 2 or 3 months. And he said it's a month of Ramadan. What does he do? Right? He can choose if he wants to fast or if he wants to break his fast and take the medicine in order to get better. وَالْمُسَافِرْ الَّذِي لَهُ قَصْرٌ, and the one that is traveling, the traveling of al-qasr. So the traveling of al-qasr, which is the traveling that is allowed to shorten your prayer. And there are certain conditions that we discussed about Salat al-Qasr, or the Musafir, the traveler that is allowed to shorten his prayer, in the chapter of Salah, in Kitab al-Salah, right? And this is one of the reasons why it's very important when you study fiqh that you study the entire fiqh from beginning to ending, because if you study one chapter, you will not get all the information you need. So see here, the author says, Musafir alladhi lahu al-qasr, the one that is permitted to do qasr. Now, what is the definition of qasr? We go back to Kitab al-Salah, and the conditions are mentioned there, right? The conditions are mentioned there. So if you just come to this chapter, Kitab al-Siyam, the chapter of Ramadan, and you study it, you may not get all the information, because the chapters are interconnected with each other in some of the masail. And the one that is traveling, Musafir al-Qasr, is that from the most important of conditions is that he is traveling 80 kilometers or more, according to the majority of the scholars. They've said that if he's traveling 80 kilometers or more with the intention of safar, with the intention of traveling, then he is permitted to shorten his prayer, and he is permitted to break his fast. However, it is better for him to fast if he's able to, and if it's not going to be a mashaqqa, a hardship upon him, it is better for him to fast, rather, not break his fast. It is better for him to fast in that situation, because the scholars have looked at the month of Ramadan. Although it is permissible for you to make up those days later on, that time, that month, that fadila, that virtue, it will never come back. Fasting one day in Ramadan will never equal fasting 30 days or 40 days outside of Ramadan. Just that time, that waqt, is so much more virtuous than any other time. So if you're able to, then it is better for you to, and if it's not going to cause harm, any hardship upon you, then it's better for you to fast in the month of Ramadan and not make them up. Wallahu a'lam. And the Prophet ﷺ said in an authentic hadith, لَيْسَ مِنَ الْبِرِّ الصَّوْمُ فِي السَّفَرِ. It is not from righteousness that you fast while you're traveling, right? So, it's not necessarily that you're more righteous if you're fasting while you're traveling. It goes back to the individual. It goes back to the individual. And it is reported that the Prophet ﷺ, he traveled and he broke his fast. And it's also reported that he traveled and he was fasting also. So both are reported from the Prophet ﷺ. And the author, rahimahullah, he goes on to say the second category, which is الثاني الحائض والنفساء تفطران وتقضيان وإن صامتا لم يجزئهما. So the author, rahimahullah, he says, from the ones that are exempted to break their fast are the menstruating women and those that have postpartum bleeding. Those that have just given birth to a child, they have bleeding after that. They break their fast and they have to make it up after their period is over, or after the menstruation is over. And if they fast during those days, then their fast will not be valid. So their fast will not be valid. وَالثَّالِثُ الْحَامِلُ وَالْمُرْضِعُ إِذَا حَافَتَا عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمَا أَفْطَرَتَا وَقَضَتَا وَإِنْ حَافَتَا عَلَى ولديهما أفطرتا وقضتا وأطعمتا عن كل يوم مسكينا وإن صامتا أجزأهما. And the third category of those that are allowed to break their fast is the pregnant woman that the pregnant woman and the one that is breastfeeding. So the pregnant woman and the one that is breastfeeding. And now there is some detail. If they fear for themselves, they break their fast and they have to make up for it. So if she fears for herself, so it would be, she would, in this condition, scholars will look at it as if she is sick and she is fearing for herself. That is why she's breaking her fast. So if she, a pregnant woman or a breastfeeding woman, if she fears for herself, then she breaks her fast and she makes up the fast, one fast, after she's able to do so. If they fear for their unborn child, they break their fast, make up for it, and feed one poor individual per day. So if they fear for the child, then they have to break their fast. They can break their fast. They make it up, but they have to also feed one poor individual per day. So they have to feed one miskin per day if they fear for the child as well. And if they fast, it is permissible and it is valid. It is valid if they fast during that time as well. Then the author, rahimahullah, he goes on to say, Al-Rabi', the fourth category is Al-Ajizu عن الصوم لكبر أو مرض لا يرجى ضره فإنه يطعم لكل يوم مسكينا. And the fourth category is the one that is incapable of fasting because of old age or an incurable disease. In this case, he should feed one poor person, one poor individual per day. So the fourth category of people that are exempted are the ones that are not able to fast because of old age, or they have a disease or a condition which is incurable, or they don't hope to get cured from this disease. Like the doctor has told them that, look, this is gonna be with you for the rest of your life, and it affects their fasting. They're not able to do that, not able to fast because of this situation. So in that condition, they would feed one poor person or one poor individual per day. Now, in terms of feeding the poor person per day, how do you feed, right? And the scholars have said that you have to feed one mud, so one measurement of wheat, or half of a sa'a, so two muds of any other food such as dates or barley or anything that is in your particular country. So you would feed that amount to the miskin person. And some of the scholars have also said that it is not necessarily measured, but you give them what is suffice for one meal. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in.